Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in to my LTLE 560 literature review presentation. Today my presentation will be on the benefits of augmented reality, specifically the augmented reality sandbox in the classroom. To begin, I'll be going over what the purpose of the literature review is, the results, and what research questions are answered. What is augmented reality? How is augmented reality used in the classroom? What are the benefits of augmented reality? And the augmented reality sandbox. The purpose of the literature review is to provide a systematic review of a variety of different articles to provide viewers and readers with enough information about the potential benefits of augmented reality in the classroom. The results found that augmented reality has numerous benefits, specifically in content understanding, memory retention, and interactivity and collaboration among students. To begin, my methods section, I used the James Madison University Library database. I primarily focused on the terms of augmented reality, AR, augmented reality sandbox, mixed reality, and the topo box. Additionally, I used 16 sources, primarily on K through 12, but not limited to. I also included higher ed, as well as some other variety of articles from the industry. I tried to focus on articles that are 15 years or newer, and most of this happened around the introduction of tablets. To begin with the results, I first want to start with what is augmented reality, and I start with this quote from Tim Cook. I'm excited about augmented reality because unlike virtual reality, which closes the world out, AR allows individuals to be present in the world, but hopefully allows an improvement on what's happening around them. That quote from Tim Cook really gives a great overview of what augmented reality is. So, what is augmented reality? For us to understand what augmented reality is, or for us to understand what something is, we must understand what and where it comes from. So, I'm going to be going over a brief historical background of augmented reality. So, to start, in 1968, computer scientist Ivan Sutherland created what is considered the first head-mounted display system. With the help of his students, Ivan Sutherland began working on his head-mounted display system in the early 1960s. By the end of the decade, the device, later named the Sword of Damocles, was fully functional. This was really the first example of augmented reality. Next, in 1990, Tom Caudell and Dave Mizell, two researchers for Boeing, came up with the name augmented reality when implementing a heads-up display, HUD, using it as a tool for visualizing complicated schematic diagrams. They both began working on their device when they were asked to create a replacement for the current system that Boeing used, which was just, at that time, large boards with wiring instructions for each of the different aircrafts. Instead, they both came up with the idea of superimposing the position of the cables through glasses and projected them onto a board. This ultimately led to the reduction of having to have boards for each of the different aircrafts, and instead they could wear the wiring instructions projected on them through reusable boards. Next, in the 1992, Louis Rosenberg created the first fully functional augmented reality systems used to train and enhance operator performance in the U.S. Air Force. Rosenberg's study confirms that overlaying abstract sensory information in the form of virtual fixtures on top of sensory feedback from a remote environment can greatly enhance performance in telemanipulation tasks. Next, in 2000, there was a significant rise and debut of many augmented reality augmented reality apps due to smartphones and tablets. Augmented reality tennis was first released in 2005 for the Nokia phone and is considered to be the first example of augmented reality on a smartphone. And finally, in 2010, Apple released its tablet, the iPad. And now I would like to add that this is very important because with the release of the iPad, many schools began to adopt the iPad into their classrooms, which then made it a little bit more easy and cost-effective for these classrooms to have augmented reality in them. So, where can we see augmented reality in the classroom? Well, you can see it in augmented reality tours, AR books, 3D models, 4D augmented reality, AR glasses, and the augmented reality sandbox, which I'll go into later. So what are the benefits of augmented reality? How does augmented reality improve learning in the classroom? Well, the first area I'd like to touch on is content understanding. In one study, the authors conducted an experiment using an augmented reality book-based educational tool called Live Solar System, LSS. The authors write that, quote, LSS allows students to explore freely in the AR solar system so that they can understand in a more concrete manner the 8 planets in our solar system. The results ultimately showed that students who used augmented reality to learn characteristics about a solar system improved their pretest scores by 46%, while those using the textbook only improved their pretest scores by 17%. In another article, while using an AR system that teaches Chinese students the meaning of word pictograms, the students' memory and reading and writing scores improved more when using the AR system compared to learning without from a traditional textbook. They took 2 groups. One group was using the AR system, and then the other group was using more traditional means. And then they compared, at the end of the lesson, they compared the 2 pretest scores, and they found that those using augmented reality techniques scored higher in the pretest and post-test scores. Next, in another study, the authors tested the effects of AR when teaching 9 to 12-year-old students about volcanoes through the use of AR-based applications that blend visual and hands-on instruction. Students using the AR applications displayed greater improvements to their pretest scores than those who did not use AR applications, thus suggesting that students learn significantly better while using AR than without. So the next section I'd like to touch on is memory retention. So the first article is in a series of studies. While using AR videos and textbooks, students were required to learn the components of an aircraft engine turbine. The research showed that students displayed significantly better short-term and long-term memory of the various components. As we can see, augmented reality can improve memory retention in students. They take this information, they process it, and then they process it into their long-term memory, and they're able to hold on to it longer. The next article is a study that compared augmented reality and virtual reality. Participants using AR had higher scores on auditory information retention when learning about the solar system. In the same study, the authors go on to claim that AR seems to be more effective because it frees up attention cognitive resources otherwise dedicated to visual channels, allowing the auditory information to be processed more thoroughly. And lastly, in an article published in June of 2020, the authors conducted an experiment that investigated the effects of mobile augmented reality, MAR, has on the retention of knowledge and information. This study compared the results of participants disassembling a PlayStation 3 using a paper manual versus disassembling a PlayStation 3 with a mobile augmented reality headset. The authors concluded that the, quote, results showed an improvement in knowledge retention for the participants using the developed MAR system compared to the participants using the conventional method. It suggested that the results of the study may be credited to the benefits of the stereoscopic vision, which bestowed the, quote, better depth judgment and spatial relationship of the different components of the PlayStation 3 console to the user. Additionally, the results indicate that animations, visuals, and 3D objects seem to help stimulate motivation in users, quote, encouraging them to pay closer attention to the training process. All these 3 studies can show that there's significantly higher levels of memory retention when using augmented reality technologies to learn in the classroom. Finally, the last section I'd like to cover is motivation, collaboration, and interactivity. In an article that surveyed several papers, the author claimed that quote, AR experiences have been shown to cause improvements in group collaboration. Additionally, another study that had students navigating a neighborhood by using either an AR map or a digital map. The students using the AR map were determined to be more efficient and successful while using the AR map, And in addition to being more successful, those using the AR map were credited to creating an atmosphere that was more welcome and welcomed collaboration amongst one another. Lastly, an article titled Augmented Reality in the Classroom, the authors concluded that the results of various studies showed that various mobile AR applications proved to, quote, motivate students to explore their surroundings and collaboratively develop their own problem-solving skills. These authors go on to explain that AR's high level of interactivity enhances learning, especially for students who learn best through visual and other non-text-based learning. So how does this relate to the Augmented Reality Sandbox? Well, we see those three categories relate to the Augmented Reality Sandbox: content understanding, memory retention, collaboration, and interactivity. These are ways that the Augmented Reality Sandbox can truly benefit learning in the classroom. So here's an example of the Augmented Reality Sandbox. To break it down, I'm going to go through the various different components. First, you have the camera. It's using a Kinect camera. Next, you have the projector. You also have the sandbox, which has kinetic sand, and it has a computer. So as students mold the sand into different shapes, the camera takes that information, sends it to the computer then processes it and spits it back out through the projector onto the sand. So as they're changing and shaping the sand, they're seeing it in real time. So how does the Augmented Reality Sandbox benefit learning? Well, I'll start by saying that in a study in which augmented reality sandboxes were used in an entry-level college geology course, by the end of the semester, students responded to exit surveys. The results of the exit surveys showed that 97% of students had a positive response to the use of the sandbox. Out of these students, 80% claimed that they had learned something from the AR sandbox that they could use in their everyday lives. In the same class, many students stated that they enjoyed the sandbox exercises more than traditional topographic map exercises. Many of the students used the word fun. So this is another example of how the augmented reality sandbox can benefit learning by creating an environment that encourages collaboration and interactivity. Next, in another article, the authors state that because its ability to merge scientific content, practice, and knowledge development, the sandbox can be an important tool for helping students understand how scientists create models that explain Earth's systems. This will also allow for students to begin developing model building skills themselves. And lastly, because of its visual and tactile nature, it's strongly suggested that the augmented reality sandbox would be the perfect tool to teach introductory ideas in geology, geography, topography, and other spatial concepts. Because of its ability for AR to allow for better auditory retention, the augmented reality sandbox may be a beneficial tool when teaching these topics listed above. Through the use of the AR sandbox, students will show higher levels of memory retention, motivation, content understanding. So, to conclude, I'd like to go over a few limitations that I had with the research done, and I'd also like to give a summary of this presentation overall. Well, as far as some of the limitations, I found that there were very few articles that really showed the long-term effects of using AR in education. There weren't any articles that really went through using AR for a long period of time. Mostly it was just for one topic for a day and it was done. Additionally, most of these articles focused on using technology, specifically augmented reality, that really did depend on a lot of money, and it might not necessarily be practical for most schools. But in conclusion, it's clear that augmented reality has significant benefits. That being said, I think it's important that we continue researching augmented reality and using it in schools to see more long-term effects of it and to see if there are more potential benefits of it. I think the majority of people who will find this research, the literature review done on this, interesting are going to be educators, primarily educators, and potentially students who are trying to find new ways to learn. So this is my presentation and the benefits of augmented reality, specifically the augmented reality sandbox in the classroom. I hope you enjoy, and thank you so much.